A single act of cruelty threatens to shatter a family's love. Will their courage rewrite the ending? In the heart of Fairview, Oregon, Sarah Thompson's joyful morning turns into a nightmare when a brutal attack tests her strength and her unborn child's life. But her husband, Michael, harbors a secret past that could turn the tables on injustice. This is a story of resilience, love, and the unbreakable fight for what's right, a journey that will grip your heart and leave you inspired. Don't miss a moment of this powerful tale. Watch until the end to witness the triumph of hope over hate. If Sarah and Michael's story moves you, please like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to our channel. Your support keeps these stories alive, fueling our mission to inspire and uplift. Join us now. Let's stand together for justice and love. In the heart of a quiet town, a single act of love was about to spark a storm that would change lives forever. Fairview, Oregon, woke to a golden sunrise, its tree-lined streets bathed in the soft light of a new day. The air carried a gentle breeze, whispering promises of peace through the quaint homes that dotted this close-knit community. At the center of it all was Sarah Thompson, a 32-year-old woman whose warmth and kindness were as radiant as the morning sun. 8 months pregnant, she stepped out of her charming blue cottage, her face glowing with a smile that could light up the darkest room. Today was no ordinary day. Sarah was planning a surprise dinner for her husband, Michael, who was returning from a business trip that evening. Her heart fluttered with anticipation, each step filled with purpose and love. Sarah moved with grace, her hand resting gently on her rounded belly as she walked toward the local market. She hummed a soft lullaby, her voice barely above a whisper, as if sharing a secret with the child she carried. "You're going to love this, little one," she said, her eyes twinkling when she felt a gentle kick in response. The moment was pure, a quiet connection between mother and child that felt like a promise of forever. The neighbors, tending to their gardens or sipping coffee on porches, waved as she passed. "Morning, Sarah," called Mrs. Delaney, an elderly widow who often said Sarah's smile was her daily dose of sunshine. Sarah waved back, her laughter soft and genuine, a melody that seemed to blend with the morning's serenity. Fairview was a town where everyone knew each other, and Sarah was its heartbeat. Known for her generosity, whether it was organizing community dinners or helping a struggling family, she had a way of making people feel seen. Today, her mission was simple, yet deeply personal: to prepare Michael's favorite meal, a gesture to show how much she'd missed him. She pictured his tired but joyful smile when he'd walk through the door, the way his eyes would light up at the sight of her cooking. The thought sent a wave of warmth through her, a high note of joy that made the world feel perfect. But beneath this tranquil surface, a subtle tension lingered, unnoticed by Sarah as she walked. The market was just a few blocks away, and she moved at a steady pace, careful not to strain herself. Each step was a quiet act of love, a testament to the life she and Michael were building. As she turned the corner, her mind danced with thoughts of the evening ahead, candles, laughter, and the comfort of being together again. The morning felt like a gift, a moment of peace before the chaos of the world could intrude. Little did Sarah know that peace was about to shatter, setting the stage for a journey of resilience, love, and justice that would leave an indelible mark on Fairview. But in a heartbeat, the serenity of Sarah's morning walk was torn apart. As she neared the market, her mind still wrapped in thoughts of Michael's smile and the dinner she'd prepare, a police car screeched to a halt beside her, its tires grinding against the pavement. The sound shattered the quiet, sending a jolt through Sarah's body. She turned, startled, her hand instinctively cradling her belly. The car's window rolled down, revealing Officer Robert Hayes, a 40-year-old newcomer to Fairview, whose reputation for hostility had already spread like wildfire. His cold, piercing eyes locked onto Sarah, narrowing with a suspicion that felt like a physical weight. "Stop right there," he barked, his voice sharp and laced with menace, cutting through the morning's peace like a blade. Sarah froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Confusion washed over her, mingling with a flicker of fear. "Is something wrong, officer?" she asked, her voice soft but steady, clinging to the hope that this was just a misunderstanding. Hayes ignored her question, stepping out of the car with a swagger that radiated unchecked authority. His presence was intimidating, his broad frame looming as he approached. "Show me your ID," he demanded, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "I'm just going to the store," she said, her words careful, measured, as she tried to keep the tremor from her voice. "Why do you need my ID?" The question hung in the air, innocent yet defiant in its simplicity. Hayes's face hardened, his eyes flashing with irritation. "Because I said so," he snapped, stepping closer, his voice rising. "You're acting suspicious, and I want to know what you're up to." The accusation hit Sarah like a slap. Suspicious? She was a pregnant woman walking to the market, her only crime the joy she carried in her heart. Her stomach churned, the warmth of the morning replaced by a chilling unease. She hadn't done anything wrong, yet the way Hayes glared at her, his gaze dripping with contempt, made her feel like she was already guilty. Her hands trembled as she fumbled in her purse, pulling out her ID in a desperate bid to defuse the situation. "Here," she said, holding it out, her voice barely above a whisper. She glanced around, noticing a few neighbors pausing on the sidewalk, their eyes wide with concern. Hayes snatched the ID, barely glancing at it before thrusting it back at her. "What are you really doing out here?" He sneered, his voice thick with suspicion, as if her existence in this quiet town was itself a crime. Sarah's fear began to shift, a spark of frustration igniting within her. "I told you," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "I'm going to the store. Can I go now?" The words were a plea wrapped in courage, a stand against the injustice unfolding before her. But Hayes wasn't listening. His face twisted with anger, and he took another step closer, his shadow falling over her. "You think you can talk back to me?" he shouted, his voice echoing down the street, drawing more eyes from the gathering crowd. The tension was palpable, a coiled spring ready to snap. Sarah's heart raced, her hands instinctively shielding her belly as if to protect the life within her. She wanted to run, to escape the hostility radiating from this man, but her legs felt rooted to the ground. The morning's promise of love and joy now felt like a distant memory, replaced by a growing dread that something terrible was about to happen. Hayes's eyes burned with a mix of arrogance and rage, and in that moment, Sarah realized she was facing not just a man, but a system that had already judged her. The world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next move in a confrontation that would soon shake Fairview to its core. No one could have predicted the horror that unfolded next. The tension between Sarah Thompson and Officer Robert Hayes crackled like a live wire, the quiet streets of Fairview, Oregon, now a stage for an unthinkable tragedy. Sarah stood frozen, her hands trembling as she clutched her ID, her eyes pleading for reason from a man whose rage seemed to consume him. The crowd of neighbors, their faces etched with growing alarm, watched in stunned silence as Hayes's voice grew louder, his accusations more venomous. "You're resisting," he bellowed, though Sarah had done nothing but stand her ground, her voice soft and her movements careful. The air was thick with dread, and in that fleeting moment, time seemed to slow, as if the world itself was bracing for what was to come. Without warning, Hayes lunged forward, his face contorted with fury. Sarah instinctively stepped back, her hands flying to her belly to shield her unborn child, but her pregnant frame made balance impossible. Before anyone could react, Hayes delivered a brutal kick to her stomach, the force of it sending her crashing to the ground. A sharp cry tore from Sarah's lips as pain exploded through her body, her hands clutching her belly as she gasped for air. "My baby!" she sobbed, tears streaming down her face, her voice breaking with terror and agony. The crowd erupted in chaos, their gasps and shouts shattering the morning's peace. "What are you doing?" screamed Mrs. Delaney, her voice trembling with disbelief as she rushed towards Sarah. "Call an ambulance!" another neighbor yelled, fumbling for their phone, their hands shaking with outrage. Sarah lay on the cold pavement, her world reduced to the searing pain and the desperate need to protect her child. She whispered through her tears, "Please, be okay," as if her words could will her baby to safety. The onlookers surged forward, some kneeling beside her, their voices a mix of comfort and panic. "Stay with us, Sarah," a young woman said, her hands gently holding Sarah's shoulder. But Sarah's vision blurred, the pain overwhelming, her heart breaking with the fear that she might lose the life she'd carried for 8 months. Hayes, meanwhile, stood back, his face a mask of indifference, shouting, "Everyone, back off!" His attempt to regain control was futile. The crowd's focus was on Sarah, their anger boiling over at the senseless cruelty they just witnessed. The wail of sirens grew louder as an ambulance sped down the street, its red lights cutting through the morning haze. Paramedics leapt out, their movements swift and precise as they assessed Sarah's condition. "She's pregnant, be careful," a neighbor called out, her voice cracking with urgency. The medics worked quickly, lifting Sarah onto a stretcher with gentle hands, their calm professionalism a stark contrast to the chaos around them. As the ambulance doors closed, Sarah's whispers of, "My baby, please," echoed in the minds of those behind. The crowd turned to Hayes, their eyes burning with a mix of shock and fury. "How could you?" a man shouted, his voice raw with emotion. Hayes's authority crumbled under the weight of their glares, his shouts ignored as the reality of his actions sank in. The ambulance sped away, carrying Sarah to Fairview General Hospital, where doctors were already preparing for an emergency. The street, once a haven of peace, was now a battleground of emotions, grief, anger, and disbelief swirling in the air. Neighbors lingered, some in tears, others pulling out phones to record the scene, their videos destined to spread like wildfire. The question that had hung over the morning, why, now burned brighter, unanswered but impossible to ignore. Sarah's pain had become Fairview's pain. And as the sirens faded into the distance, one thing was clear. This was only the beginning of a story that would shake the town to its core. The echo of the ambulance sirens lingered in Fairview, Oregon, like a wound that refused to heal. The brutal attack on Sarah Thompson had ripped through the town's quiet fabric, leaving its residents reeling in shock and fury. By noon, the videos captured by neighbors saw unfiltered footage of Officer Robert Hayes kicking a pregnant woman had exploded across social media. Hashtags like #Justice for Sarah and #End Police Brutality trended nationwide, each share amplifying the outrage. Comments poured in, from Fairview locals to strangers across the country, their words a chorus of disbelief and demands for accountability. "How could this happen?" one user wrote. "She was just walking to the store," another cried. The nation watched, hearts breaking for Sarah, their anger a rising tide that threatened to drown the silence of inaction. At Fairview General Hospital, the atmosphere was a storm of urgency and fear. Sarah, her body racked with pain, was rushed into the emergency room, her cries for her baby echoing down the sterile halls. Doctors and nurses moved with precision, their calm voices masking the gravity of the situation. "We need to stabilize her now," a doctor said, his eyes scanning monitors as they prepared for an emergency C-section. Sarah's placenta had detached due to the trauma, a life-threatening complication that left no time for hesitation. Her best friend Lisa burst through the hospital doors, her face pale with panic. "Sarah!" she cried, rushing to her side, her hands trembling as she grasped Sarah's. "I'm here, okay? You're going to be okay." Sarah's eyes, clouded with pain and fear, met Lisa's. "I'm so scared," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "My baby, please, Lisa." Lisa squeezed her hand, her voice breaking. "You're strong, Sarah. You and that baby are fighters. I'm not leaving you." The hospital room grew quiet for a moment, the weight of Sarah's words settling over them like a heavy fog. Lisa stayed by her side, whispering words of comfort as the nurses wheeled Sarah toward surgery. The doors swung shut, leaving Lisa alone with her prayers, her heart aching for her friend. Outside, the world continued to churn. The videos of Hayes' attack spread further, each view fueling the public's rage. Fairview, once a haven of peace, was now a focal point of national scrutiny, its residents grappling with the reality that such cruelty could happen in their own backyard. The question of why Sarah, why now burned in their minds, unanswered but unrelenting. Across the country, in a Seattle conference room, Michael Thompson's phone buzzed, pulling him from a business meeting. Seeing Lisa's name, his stomach dropped. He excused himself, his voice tight as he answered. "Michael, it's Sarah," Lisa said, her words frantic. "She's hurt. A cop attacked her, and she's in surgery." You need to get here now." The world tilted beneath Michael's feet. He didn't wait for the meeting to end. He grabbed his bag and raced to the airport, his mind a blur of dread and disbelief. Sarah, the woman who filled his life with light, was fighting for her life and their child's. The flight back to Fairview felt endless, each minute stretching into eternity as he imagined her pain, her fear. Michael's hands clenched into fists, a quiet resolve forming beneath his grief. Whatever had happened, whoever had done this, he would make it right. As the hospital staff fought to save Sarah and her baby, the community's outrage grew louder, a collective cry for justice that could no longer be ignored. The story of Sarah Thompson was no longer just Fairview Sit, was a call to the world. A reminder that love and resilience could spark change even in the darkest moments. If Sarah's story has moved you, please like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel to join us in sharing stories that matter. Your support fuels our mission to amplify voices like Sarah's, to shine a light on injustice, and to inspire hope. Together, we can make a difference. Let's keep this story alive. In the wake of Sarah's agony, a quiet storm was brewing, one that would soon shake the foundations of Fairview, Oregon. As the hospital fought to save Sarah Thompson and her unborn child, Michael Thompson landed at Fairview's small airport, his heart a tangled knot of fear and fury. The news of his wife's brutal attack by Officer Robert Hayes had shattered his world, each word from Lisa's frantic call replaying in his mind like a nightmare. He rushed to Fairview General Hospital, his usually composed demeanor replaced by a raw, unshakable urgency. When he found Lisa in the waiting area, her eyes red and swollen from tears, the weight of the moment hit him like a tidal wave. "She's in surgery," Lisa choked out, her voice trembling. "They're doing everything they can to save the baby." Michael's knees buckled, and he sank into a chair, his hands shaking as he buried his face in them. "Who did this?" he asked, his voice low, almost a growl. "A cop," Lisa replied, her words heavy with disbelief. "Officer Hayes." "There are videos, Michael. It's everywhere." The hospital's sterile silence was a stark contrast to the chaos raging within Michael. Unknown to most, Michael, 35, was no ordinary businessman. A former intelligence operative, he had spent years navigating high-stakes missions, trained to remain calm under pressure, to think 3 steps ahead, and to act with lethal precision. But this wasn't a mission in some distant country. This was his family, his heart, lying in a hospital bed, fighting for survival. As he waited, each tick of the clock felt like a lifetime, his mind oscillating between dread and a burning need to protect Sarah. Finally, a doctor emerged, his face weary but steady. "Mr. Thompson," he said, "your wife is out of surgery. She's stable, and we delivered your son. He's small and needs intensive care, but they're both fighters." Relief washed over Michael, a fleeting high that softened the edges of his pain. "Can I see her?" he asked, his voice barely steady. The doctor nodded, and Michael followed, his heart aching at the thought of Sarah's suffering. Entering Sarah's room, Michael's breath caught. She lay pale and fragile, her eyes fluttering open as he approached. "Michael," she whispered, tears welling as she saw him. "I tried to protect him." His eyes stung, and he took her hand, kissing it gently. "You did everything, Sarah," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're both safe now." But beneath his soothing words, a fire was kindling. The relief of knowing Sarah and their son were alive was quickly overtaken by a cold, resolute anger. Whoever had done this would pay. As he sat by Sarah's side, stroking her hand, his mind began to shift, the operative within him awakening. He needed answers, and he needed justice. The next morning, Michael strode into the Fairview police station, his face a mask of controlled fury. He demanded to speak to the chief, his voice steady but laced with authority. When he finally sat across from an officer, the response was infuriatingly dismissive. "Hayes was doing his job," the officer said, shrugging. "She must have resisted. There's no clear evidence of misconduct." Michael's jaw clenched, his hands balling into fists. "My wife was attacked," he said, each word deliberate. "There are witnesses. There's video." The officer's eyes flickered, but he doubled down. It's under review. These things take time. The words were a slap, a clear signal that the system was closing ranks around Hayes. Michael stood, his gaze piercing. Time, he said softly, is something you don't have. As he left the station, Michael's mind raced, his training kicking into overdrive. The videos circulating online, the public's outrage, the hospital's reportal, were pieces of a puzzle he could use. He wasn't just a grieving husband. He was a man with skills honed in the shadows, capable of dismantling lives with surgical precision. The police might protect Hayes, but Michael would not. Back at the hospital, he sat by Sarah's side, her hand in his, promising her silently that no one would hurt their family again. The storm within him was no longer quiet, it was a force, ready to strike. Hayes had no idea what was coming, but Michael did, and he was already 3 steps ahead. But Michael Thompson was not a man to wait for a broken system to deliver justice. As he left the Fairview police station, the dismissive words of the officer echoed in his mind, fueling a resolve as sharp as a blade. The videos of Officer Robert Hayes' brutal attack on Sarah were everywhere, the public's outrage a roaring fire, yet the police had to shield their own. Michael's heart burned with the image of Sarah lying pale in her hospital bed, her whispered fears for their newborn son haunting him. He returned to their quiet home, the warmth of their life together now overshadowed by a cold determination. In the dim light of his study, the gentle husband Sarah knew vanished, replaced by the calculated operative he had once been. This was no longer about hope, it was about retribution, and Michael was ready to play a game Hayes could never win. He sat at his desk, his movements deliberate, and began making calls. Each conversation was cryptic, a series of coded phrases spoken in a low, steady voice. "I need everything you can find," he said to one contact. "No trace, no mistakes," to another. To an outsider, the words were meaningless, but to those on the other end, old allies from his intelligence days, they were marching orders. Michael's past was a vault of secrets. Years spent tracking targets, dismantling networks, and uncovering truths buried deep. Now, those skills were his weapon. Within hours, files began arriving, encrypted documents detailing Hayes' history of abuse, complaints that had been mysteriously buried, and incidents swept under the rug by a complicit system. Michael's lips curled into a grim smile. Hayes thought he was untouchable, but he was about to learn how vulnerable he truly was. The first strike came at dawn. Hayes woke to find a stack of envelopes on his doorstep, their presence as jarring as a gunshot. His hands shook as he tore one open, revealing printouts of his past misdeeds cases he'd thought long forgotten, names of victims he'd silenced. Another contained photos of him at a bar, at his gym, even in his own backyard, moments he hadn't known were being watched. A single note, written in bold, sent a chill down his spine. "We know everything." Hayes stumbled back into his house, his heart pounding, his eyes darting to the empty street. The quiet of Fairview, once his domain, now felt like a trap closing around him. He tried to shrug it off, to convince himself it was a prank, but the precision of the delivery, the sheer audacity gnawed at him. As the day wore on, Michael's plan tightened its grip. Hayes' car refused to start, its engine tampered with in ways no mechanic could trace. His phone glitched, shutting off mid-call, restarting with cryptic error messages. He swore he saw the same unmarked sedan pass his house, its tinted windows hiding whoever was inside. At the station, colleagues who once slapped his back now avoided his gaze, their whispers trailing him like shadows. "You've made a mess, Hayes," his sergeant muttered, offering no support, only a warning to clean it up. The walls were closing in, and Hayes' arrogance began to crack, replaced by a creeping paranoia. He was no longer the hunter, he was prey, and he didn't know who was pulling the strings. The final blow came that night. Alone in his living room, Hayes' phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number, a video link. His hands trembled as he clicked it, and his blood ran cold. The screen showed a live feed of his own living room, his couch, his coffee table, his life filmed from an angle he couldn't place. The camera panned to a note on the table he hadn't noticed. "You messed with the wrong family. Make it right, or the world will know." Hayes scrambled to grab the note, his breath shallow, his mind racing. Someone had been inside his home, past his locks, his alarms, leaving no trace. The realization hit him like a freight train. This wasn't a warning, it was a reckoning, orchestrated by someone with power he couldn't comprehend. Michael, watching the feed vanish from his own screen, leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. The trap was set, and Hayes was running out of moves. No one could have foreseen the unraveling that followed. Officer Robert Hayes, once a figure of unchecked authority in Fairview, Oregon, was now a man cornered by his own sins, ensnared in the web Michael Thompson had meticulously woven. The cryptic notes, the damning evidence, the chilling video feed from his own home, they had stripped away his bravado, leaving only a shell of fear and desperation. The town buzzed with anticipation as news spread that Hayes was holding a press conference outside the police station, a move that puzzled and intrigued a community still reeling from Sarah Thompson's brutal attack. Reporters set up cameras, residents gathered, and the air crackled with the weight of expectation. Sarah, now stable and recovering in the hospital, insisted on attending, her hand clasped tightly in Michael's his own. She wanted to face the man who had nearly taken everything from her, though doubt lingered in her heart. Would he deflect, deny, or worse? As Hayes stepped to the microphone, the crowd fell silent, stunned by his appearance. Gone was the swaggering officer. In his place stood a pale, trembling man, his eyes darting nervously across the sea of faces. His hands fumbled with the microphone, betraying a fragility no one had seen before. I want to address the incident," he began, his voice shaky, cracking under the pressure. "What I did was wrong. I overstepped my authority, and I deeply regret my actions." A murmur rippled through the crowd, shock mingling with disbelief. Hayes swallowed hard, his gaze dropping to the ground. "I want to apologize to Sarah Thompson and her family. I'm sorry for the pain I caused. I'm resigning from the police force. Effective immediately." The words hung in the air, a bombshell that detonated into whispers and gasps. Cameras flashed, reporters scribbled furiously, capturing a moment that felt like the turning of a tide. Sarah's breath caught, her grip on Michael's hand tightening. Tears welled in her eyes, not from anger, but from a flood of relief she hadn't expected. She had braced for excuses, for the system to shield Hayes as it had tried before. But here he was, broken and accountable. The weight of her pain, the fear for her newborn son, seemed to lift, if only slightly. Michael's face remained calm, but his eyes held a quiet intensity, a silent acknowledgement of the victory he'd orchestrated. The crowd's whispers grew louder, speculation swirling about what had forced Hayes' hand. No one knew the truth, no one but Michael, whose calculated moves had brought a man to his knees without ever stepping into the light. As the press conference ended, Hayes hurried away, ignoring the barrage of reporters' questions. His career was over, his reputation in ruins, and the town watched him go with a mix of satisfaction and lingering questions. Sarah and Michael returned home, the tension of the past days easing like a storm finally breaking. In their living room, Sarah turned to Michael, her voice soft but urgent. "How did this happen?" she asked, her eyes searching his. "Why would he just give up?" "I thought they'd protect him." Michael guided her to the couch, his touch gentle but his expression guarded. "Sometimes people see the consequences of their actions," he said, his voice steady, reassuring. But Sarah's gaze lingered, a spark of curiosity cutting through her relief. "Michael, your job. It's more than you've told me, isn't it?" she pressed, her tone gentle but probing. Michael's smile was warm, tinged with a hint of sadness. "My job is to keep you safe, Sarah," he said, squeezing her hand. "You and Ethan. That's all that matters." For a moment, silence settled between them, a quiet understanding that some truths were better left unspoken. Sarah nodded, leaning into him, comforted by his presence but aware of the shadows he carried. The victory was theirs, but the mystery of Michael's power remained, a subtle undercurrent that added depth to their triumph. As they sat together, the world outside continued to buzz with the news of Hayes' resignation, but in their home, there was only the promise of healing. of a family unbroken by cruelty. Michael had delivered justice, and though Sarah would never know the full extent of his actions, she felt the strength of his love, a force that had turned despair into hope. In the quiet aftermath of justice, a new dawn broke over Fairview, Oregon, carrying with it the promise of healing. The storm that had shaken the Thompson family, ignited by Officer Robert Hayes' brutal attack on Sarah and quelled by Michael's calculated retribution, had finally begun to fade. Sarah and Michael brought their newborn son, Ethan, home from the hospital, his tiny cries a fragile but powerful reminder of their resilience. The blue cottage, once a backdrop to Sarah's joyful plans, now glowed with a deeper warmth, a sanctuary rebuilt from the ashes of pain. As they stepped through the door, Sarah's eyes lingered on Michael, her heart full of gratitude but laced with questions about the man who had turned their nightmare into triumph. The victory over Hayes was undeniable, but the mystery of Michael's hidden strength hung like a soft shadow, both comforting and elusive. That evening, as Sarah rested with Ethan cradled in her arms, Michael retreated to his study, the weight of the past weeks settling over him. His phone buzzed with a final message from an old contact. Hayes' case is sealed. Authorities have everything. He's done. Michael's fingers hovered over the screen before typing a curt, "Thank you." He set the phone down, his gaze drifting to a small locked drawer in his desk. With a slow, deliberate motion, he pulled out a metal box, its surface worn from years of secrecy. He hadn't opened it in a long time, but tonight felt different, a closing of one chapter and the beginning of another. Lifting the lid, he revealed its contents: a badge bearing the emblem of an intelligence agency, passports with names that weren't his, and encrypted devices that had once been tools of a life lived in the shadows. Each item was a fragment of the man he'd been, a man trained to dismantle empires, to move unseen, to protect at any cost. Michael's fingers traced the badge, a flicker of pride mingling with relief. He had used that life to save his family, to ensure Hayes faced the consequences of his cruelty. But as he looked at a photo on his desk, Sarah laughing in a sunlit park, her smile brighter than the world, he knew this was the life that mattered. He closed the box, sliding it back into the drawer, a silent vow to leave the shadows behind. The operative was no longer needed. The husband and father would carry them forward. In the stillness, a wave of gratitude washed over him, a high note of love that softened the edges of his resolve. He had fought for Sarah and Ethan, and they were safe. That was enough. In their bedroom, Sarah stirred as Michael entered, his presence a quiet anchor in the dim light. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her voice a whisper, her eyes searching his. He sat beside her, his hand resting gently on hers, feeling the warmth of her skin. "Everything's fine," he said, his voice steady, a promise woven into each word. "No one will hurt our family again." Sarah smiled, her eyelids heavy as she drifted back to sleep, comforted by the certainty in his tone. Michael watched her, his heart swelling with a love so fierce it could move mountains. The scars of their ordeal would linger, but they were proof of their strength, of a bond that no cruelty could break. As the house grew quiet, the locked drawer in Michael's study held the secrets of his past, hidden but never forgotten. The man who had orchestrated Hayes' downfall was more than a hero. He was a guardian, driven by love to protect what mattered most. The lesson of their journey was clear. In the face of injustice, courage and love can light the darkest paths. For Sarah and Michael, the road ahead was one of hope, built on the unshakable truth that family is worth any fight. Their story, born in pain, ended in triumph, a testament to the power of resilience and the quiet strength that lies in those who love deeply. As the sun sets over Fairview, Oregon, the Thompson family finds solace in the quiet strength of their love, a beacon that guided them through the darkest storm. For Sarah, the pain of that brutal morning lingers, but it's softened by the warmth of her newborn son, Ethan, and the unwavering presence of Michael, the man who turned despair into justice. From her hospital bed to the moment she faced Officer Hayes' apology, Sarah learned that resilience isn't just surviving, it's standing tall, holding fast to those you love, and trusting that truth will prevail. Michael, the silent guardian, whose past remains a mystery even to her, sees their victory through a different lens. A reminder that love demands action, that protecting family sometimes means stepping into the shadows to shine a light on wrong. Together, they've woven a tapestry of courage, proving that even when the world feels broken, a family's bond can rebuild it stronger. This journey, born in pain and resolved in triumph, carries a universal truth. Injustice may strike without warning, but love and determination can rewrite the ending. Sarah and Michael's story teaches us that our greatest power lies in the choices we make for those we hold dear, whether it's a quiet act of kindness or a bold stand against cruelty. It's a call to look within, to find the strength to fight for what's right, and to never let fear silence our voices. Their love turned a moment of violence into a legacy of hope, a lesson that resonates far beyond Fairview's borders. When we stand together, no darkness is too deep to overcome. If this story has touched your heart, stirred your spirit, or inspired you to believe in the power of justice and love, please take a moment to like this video. Your support means the world to us. Share your thoughts in the comments, tell us how Sarah and Michael's journey moved you, or share your own stories of resilience. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button to join our community, where we bring you more stories that captivate, inspire, and remind us of the strength within us all. Together, let's keep these powerful narratives alive, shining a light on hope and humanity. Thank you for being here. Until next time, stay strong and keep fighting for what matters.